Welcome back to Lusail International Circuit Day 2 in the Qatar Grand Prix household, and the watchword today has been speed, and I refer not to Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock on a bus, anonymous bomb threats by Dennis Hopper. Shouldn't mention anonymous bomb threats when I'm in a state like this.
What about a cruise ship? Didn't they end up on a cruise ship? Is that the second one?
Speed 2, I think. Not a film I've bothered seeing. Anyway, yeah, 3 seconds a lap faster than comparable sessions last year, which we'll dig into later. Lando Norris on pole, but not very far ahead of George Russell, who are we in coulda, woulda, shoulda territory with George on pole today?
Yeah, very much so. So sprint race pole for the opening race of this weekend, the shorter one, run over 14 laps here on Saturday tomorrow. Yeah, it's an interesting day from various points. Let's talk about the lap times first. As you say, Codders, 3 seconds a lap faster. Pirelli explaining there are quite a few factors explaining that. Chief amongst which, the fact that it's 20 degrees cooler in terms of track temperatures. Now, obviously, we know much later here in the year. Hence, yes, it is. I mean, funnily enough, in the desert, it is pretty chilly. You persisting with that one, which apparently has caught the ire of various people in the media centre for some unknown reason.
Apparently, I don't own a coat, and people are complaining.
Not on your pitiful stipend,
That's
anyway.
on my pitiful stipend.
But yeah, colder. The fact there's support races here, so we've got Formula 2, we've got F1 Academy, and those Porsches were out earlier making their extremely loud noise, as they always do. And that's just laying down more rubber, plus the fact that, don't forget, we've got a year of car development and just added downforce and quicker cars. So that all adds up to, significantly higher speeds. You know, the cars are just, we were out in FP1 at the high speed section, 12, 13, 14, into 15, a little bit slower, but they are just absolutely caning it around there, and it really is interesting. But yeah, the good news is, as we've discussed with Pirelli tonight, so far, nothing clocked in terms of the tiny microscopic separations in tyre side they were already seeing at this stage in the 2023 event that we then know after the sprint race became, a big impact on the Grand Prix. But yeah, sprint qualifying, Lando Norris. It was interesting. I sort of arrived here in Qatar having watched what both McLaren drivers were saying after Las Vegas, and it was very much a case of, we actually don't think we're going to be that good in Qatar compared to the Red Bull because the Red Bull's king in high-speed corners. Well, Max Verstappen only 5th, Sergio Perez out in Q1 for sprint race, SQ1 I should say, and McLaren on top. However, there is this theory put forward by Mr. George Russell himself that he should have been starting the sprint race from pole position instead of Lando Norris, with Oscar Piastri third in the other McLaren, but it's a fascinating reason why not, and it again relates to that high speed that we were talking about earlier. It's essentially as George comes out of turn 14, that final flat out right hand corner, that was the problem, he took it flat out, and it confused his engine, it confused the electrical deployment systems in the engine. Effectively what happens, we have seen this before a few years ago, go back and look at Fernando Alonso, I think when he was driving for McLaren before his sabbatical, that would have been, at Spa. Effectively, if you pin the throttle in a place that the algorithm, the computer systems of these very complex hybrid engines, effectively the engine brain, for want of a better explanation, is thinking that it's still on a straight, it's not in a corner, so it's not coming out of a corner, so it doesn't need to deploy extra battery energy. So therefore, it sort of just goes, and you don't get the same sort of punch out the corners you might expect because the driver's effectively not told it to deliver that. So George almost costing himself, but it equally shows that he had the confidence, he had the speed he would have gained by going flat out through that bit of corner. So yeah, it sets up potentially an exciting sprint race because the two McLaren drivers will have to drive with the Constructors' Championship and the points they can gather in that race in mind. George Russell, Mercedes not a factor. He can really fight hard for that win.
Yeah, and of course Ferrari up and down day, isn't it? Topped the only practice session, and then back to reality. There goes gravity, as Charles Leclerc said. Sorry, a more contemporary pop reference tonight than last night.
It wouldn't help me, to be honest, but there we go. Yeah, it's interesting. I think, again, from the conversations we've had with the Pirelli engineers tonight, Simone Berra, the chief engineer, saying, look, the challenge here is actually, because you saw a difference within the Ferrari drivers. You saw Carlos Sainz, when it came to the final runs in SQ3, also the runs throughout SQ3, he was taking preparation laps. Charles Leclerc able to hit it from the off, which is what Lando Norris did, got in pole position, and because they obviously got the confidence to get that peak of the tyre grip, that will have given them a little boost. George Russell showed that actually the degradation was so low, you could still find time even on your final laps. But effectively what that preparation lap was about was the challenge here is balancing both axles, getting the tyres warm at the front, not a problem with the high-speed corners. The rear tyres, however, you can start the lap with those too cool and not providing the grip that you need, simply because there's no big high-speed stops, therefore there's no big traction zone, so you're not getting the heat cycle going through the rear tyres. That's what it looked like Sainz was trying to do. Obviously didn't come off for him until right at the very end. He gets up into fourth place, and Charles Leclerc shuffled down to behind him.
Yeah, part and parcel of this being designed initially as a motorcycle racing track, of course, without all those big stops and big acceleration zones, because you go gee on a motorbike and you go upwards.
Didn't you fall off a motorbike or a motorbike landed on top of you? Did it make that noise when it did that?
It didn't quite, but my main memory of it is waking up in the ditch with the Ducati on top of me. But we won't go into that. It was a long time ago.
Wasn't his bike.
It wasn't my bike, it was Ducati's anyway. So yeah, moving on swiftly from my vandalism, Max and Lewis slightly less impressive. Not as unimpressive as Sergio Perez with a lap untidier than Greg Wallace's sock draw. Charles Leclerc had a small part to play in that at the beginning of
will the lawyers be watching? Anyway, yes, that's what Sergio Perez is blaming for his exit in SQ1. But actually, we come to expect this from Sergio Perez's results this year, but it has opened up a fascinating extra dynamic in the sprint race tomorrow, which is that obviously you've got points down to 8th place. And with him absent, that means that one of, if you assume all the finishes, there's no crashes or whatever, which is done on pure pace, one of Pierre Gasly from Alpine, Nico Hülkenberg from Haas, or Liam Lawson from RB, they'll be fighting to get that 1 point in 8th place. And those three teams at the moment are split by just 4 points, with Haas ahead. Therefore, this time next week, just shortly. A bit more than this time next week after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, so I engage my brain if there is one in there. But yeah, it is. It's mad. It's barely earlier than Vegas. It's a bit of an odd one. But anyway, that battle for 6th in the Constructors Championship could come down to a single point, which potentially could be scored tomorrow. So yeah, it adds a very extra interesting dynamic to a sprint race, which occasionally they can be a little bit on the boring side, but it's I think last year the sprint race was made a lot more interesting by the fact that different tyres were chosen. It wasn't like the Brazil sprint race we saw a few weeks ago where everyone was on the mediums, lots of different compounds, lots of different approaches. So it could all play out that way tomorrow. But well, that's the on-track stuff, Codders. You've been covering very interesting and significant off-track development today, which is that where we are, Qatar, the sort of investment authority of this country, extremely wealthy, let's not forget. As you can see by the motor facilities, look at all that was put up ahead of
glittering palace.
The event reopening here in 2023 in terms of F1 terms. Yeah, they've bought in to the Sauber Audi project. So what's that all about?
Yeah, well, once again, diversification away from fossil fuels like a number of the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, all trying to diversify away from fossil fuels, basically sinking it into other stuff that they can make money from. And so for 20 years now, pretty much, Qatar has been investing in real estate. I think they own a chunk of Heathrow Airport. They own half of London, I think.
The Shard, is that then?
The Shard, yeah. If you stand at the top and look down, is that Shard and Freude?
It certainly is.
The Germans don't have a word for that.
Terrifying. I would never go up that high. Your jokes are terrifying. Anyway, do carry on.
The Qatar Investment Authority already owns 17% of the VW Audi group. They're the largest individual shareholder in that. Now, you might think that against a background of plummeting car sales, a bit of a wobble for the car industry, investors would be running away. But as I mentioned in my piece in Autosport.com today, which you haven't read yet because you've been busy writing stuff.
I read the headline.
We quote Warren Buffett, be fearful when other people are being greedy, be greedy when other people are being fearful. So they bought reportedly a 30% stake in the Audi Sauber project or will be buying a 30% stake worth around $350 million. So what that does for Audi is it de-risks their investment. They don't have to sink more money in, and it enables them to stay in the game, and it enables Qatar to have a position in Formula One, a little bit like some of their neighbours. You have Aramco, which are not just a Formula One sponsor, but an Aston Martin sponsor. The Bahrain Sovereign Wealth Fund owns McLaren, and is reportedly going to sell some of McLaren Automotive to the Abu Dhabi's Sovereign Wealth Fund. So there's a lot of money circulating around. So yeah, I think it basically equates to a much better future for that team, which they need because they're welded to the back of the grid at the moment. And the problem is the facilities are antediluvian. They have problems getting people to come to work in Switzerland, not because it's a horrible place. It's a lovely place, just some people don't like it. And also because the labour laws are quite tight. You need to pay people a lot of money. And we saw a few months ago that they were looking for some sort of leeway in the budget cap to be able to pay people more. And the other teams went, no way, Jose. Or, no way, Fritz. Or no way, Franck, depending on whether you're Swiss German or French German. French German?
Nah, Swiss.
Nah, Swiss.
Anyway.
It's time to put this in the can because it's late and we're going entirely mad. So join us again tomorrow when you may get a different cast of more sensible characters reporting from sprint race day, qualifying day.